Secondly, what does this passage teach us about relationships? This is where it gets quite fun. Well, first, we see the first marriage after Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve was the first marriage ceremony. Now we see Rebekah and Isaac. And as we look at this, we're moved by this love. As we think about our spouse, we need to realize that God has provided us our spouse. It may not be as clear as what happened here when you first get married, but you should be able to look back, and you can look back and say, God led me to him or her. God gave me this person to live the rest of my life with. If God didn't want you to marry that person, he would have kept you from your spouse. Do you trust that God has intended you to be with this person? Because when you doubt if your spouse is good enough for you, what you're doubting is God's wisdom and goodness to provide that spouse for you. Men, we are called to love our wives. We are called to intentionally seek our wives out and love them as the second greatest gift God has ever given to us. First is salvation. The first and best gift God has given us is his Son, Jesus Christ. The second best gift we've ever received is our wives. Do we love our wives as God's gift to us? Do we wait to fall back in love with her? Or do we intentionally pursue her? Do you see your calling first and foremost to love her above everything else? Do you thank God and praise him regularly for the great gift he has given you? Intentionally set your affections on her. Love her as Christ loved the church. Lay down your life for her. If you ever are tempted to think you deserve better, know this. You probably don't deserve her at all. By God's grace, he saved you. By God's grace, he let you marry her. We must seek God's power and his guidance to love our wives. We must long to love her and build her up into godliness. And you can't do that in your own strength. If you want to have success in your marriage, depend upon God the way Abraham and the servant depended upon God. You can't lead her by yourself. We're going to move kind of backwards from marriage. Let's talk about dating. Dating today is a horrible scene that I am very thankful I'm not part of. I practiced before a Christian the worldly dating. It is a weird, horrible, destructive culture. It teaches us that we're supposed to be able to move on from partner to partner with emotional and physical. We're supposed to be able to move from partner to partner both emotionally and physically. The way dating is practiced in your younger generation and even throughout high school and now college and now even older in the world is teaching us that physical intimacy can be transferred over and over again. I think that's why our divorce rate is so high. People are learned to detach quickly and easily, both physically and emotionally. For those who are single, especially those who are young, set yourself towards protecting your body and your affections. Set yourself to protect your body and your affections. You're not just playing around. You're not just having a good time. You're dealing with the great treasure of your innocence that you can never get back. Now, as we look at this model of finding a spouse, we have to ask, what is a parent's role in marriage? Well, we could say every parent should get a servant, and that servant should be sent out to find a spouse. Sounds like a good plan. Now, I say that because we have to deal with the tension of what's descriptive here and what's prescriptive. Right? So at one level, this is describing what happened then. So there are some definite cultural elements. There's camels. But then we have to look and say, what is prescriptive? What can we gain from this? What can we get out of this? Well, the first thing is we should be, as parents, dependent upon God for our spouse, for our children's spouses. We as parents should be praying for our children and for their spouses. We should be constantly dependent upon God, saying, please be preparing for my daughter now, her spouse, or for my son now, his spouse. Parents should be preparing that child for marriage. Parents should be modeling marriage. Parents should be modeling how to fight and how to find forgiveness in one another. Parents should be modeling the gospel in marriage. Children, you need to trust your parents in dating. Honor your mother and father by listening to them and hearing them. If you're to think about dating or courting, whatever that difference is, you need to be praying with your parents about how you're going to find a partner, enter into a relationship, and what that looks like. Dating or courting, there's a recent article in World Magazine. John will send you the link if you ask him. He likes it. It shows the difficult position Christians are in. It's a difficult world. And I don't know about all the prescriptions. I think they're a description as well. But the prescriptions I'm still wrestling with. John will tell you about them. What I think is better is to find parameters. I'm a parameters person. I want to say there's a lot of freedom in how you're going to find dating or courting. But here are some clear parameters. 1, don't date anyone you know you could not marry. Don't date anyone you could not marry. It doesn't mean you're dating someone you're going to marry, but don't date anyone you wouldn't marry. This isn't just a fun thing. This isn't just finding someone because you're too lonely. This isn't just filling time. This isn't just having fun. Don't date someone you could not marry. That means if you're a Christian, you're not dating a non-Christian. It means if you're a Christian, you're not dating someone who's not leading you into godliness. Which leads us to our second parameter. Don't date anyone that tempts you to sin, that does not lead you into godliness. Don't enter into a relationship where you're going to be tempted to sin. Don't enter a relationship where you're not pursuing God with that person. And finally, and really most importantly for the young folk, don't date anyone without praying about it with your parents. Do not date anyone, do not enter into a relationship without praying about it with your parents. You should both have a peace about it. Your parents' role isn't just to pay for your wedding. Your parents' role isn't just to give away the bride. There's really something beautiful about that symbolism. You are supposed to have had the partnership with your family to the point where your father is excited to walk you down the aisle and hand you over to this man. There is something beautiful about that symbolism. It's not just because he paid for the wedding he gets to do that. No, it's because he was part of the process from the very beginning and to the very end. Now, if you are like me, you are married and you know that you failed in the way you dated. You know now, looking back, how many mistakes you made. Know that Christ knew of those mistakes when he died for you. Know that you are forgiven for how we failed in the way we dated.